Hi guys, my name is Maddie and I'll be doing the kids lesson for this week. So this week we're going to talk about Samuel being born and that he was called to do his purpose. So our Christ connection this week is that God called to Samuel and Samuel responded. God calls his people to turn from sin and follow Jesus. So this week we're going to learn about how Jesus called Samuel and that he responded and to fulfill his purpose that God had for him. So, God called Samuel and invited him to become his prophet who would shed the light of his words to his people. So Samuel trusted God as the hope of salvation and to lead others to do the same. So this is one of our purposes as being a Christian is to trust in God and to lead others to know about Jesus as well. So in the story that you guys are going to read, you're going to learn about how Samuel's mother, Hannah, spent years of praying to God for wanting a son because she had gone all these years and never had a daughter or a son. So she prayed to the Lord and asked him for a son. And the Lord promised she promised to dedicate him back to the Lord when she was born. So we see that in the story, the Lord gave Hannah a son and she named him Samuel. And from the prayers of Hannah, Samuel was led in the ways from the Lord and responded to God's call with an open hand of faith. So, throughout the story, we learn about trust and obedience. So again, one of our purposes is, as followers of Jesus, is that we trust and obey God's calling. So by trusting and obeying him, we are able to obey his commands and lead others, just like Samuel did, to follow Jesus as well. So, throughout the Samuel 1 through 3 that you guys are going to read, we learn that Hannah went to the Lord's house crying and praying to God. And she said, "Lord, please give me a son and I will give him back to you." So God answered Hannah's prayer and she gave birth to a boy that she named Samuel. When he was a few years old, Hannah returned Samuel back to Eli, who would watch over Samuel, and for Samuel to worship and serve the Lord there. So, throughout all of this, God hears and responds to Hannah's prayer. So we can understand that when we pray to God, when we pray to Jesus, he will answer our prayer in his timing, in ways that are best for us. And sometimes that's not in the way we thought it was or in that right timing, but it's always in the Lord's timing when our prayer is going to be answered. And we learn through this story that God can always be trusted. Hannah prayed to the Lord so many times, and years later down the road, she gave birth to a son. So we need to remember that God can always be trusted, even when it's not in our exact timing or the certain way that we would want it to. So Samuel would worship the Lord through living with Eli, and Samuel responded to God's call by seeking him. And he said, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." So throughout the story, Samuel hears a voice and he thinks that it's Eli. So he keeps going back to Eli and saying, "You've called me, you've called me." But Eli tells Samuel that that's the Lord speaking. So finally, when Samuel hears it a fourth time, Samuel responds to God's calling and says, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening," so that he can listen to what the Lord had said. So God called to Samuel, and Samuel responded in obedient faith. God raised up Samuel to be a prophet for the people of Israel. So meaning that he would speak on behalf of the Lord. So the Lord would tell Samuel what he wanted the people to know, and Samuel would go out and be that prophet and tell all the people about Jesus. So today God calls people to turn away from sin and follow Jesus. Everyone who responds by trusting in Jesus is saved the punishment sin deserves. So like Samuel, we have the opportunity to respond to God's call, to trust in Jesus for salvation and forgiveness of sin. So the main point of this story, the Christ connection, is how God spoke to Samuel and Samuel trusted the Lord and was obedient to his calling. So that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you have a great week and I'll see you next time. Bye!